Yo, what's up guys? My name is Caleb, otherwise known as the Critic Kebab, and today we're going to be reviewing Doctor Who Series 11. The 11th season of Doctor Who introduces us to the first female Doctor portrayed by Jodie Whittaker, and she is accompanied by three companions, Mandip Gill as Yasmin, Tosin as Ryan, and Bradley Walsh as Graham. We also have the first time Doctor Who showrunner in Chris Chibnall, so this is a fresh chapter for the show, so let's just get straight into my thoughts. Now, I must emphasize these are my passionate thoughts on this season, so let's create a respectful conversation in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, I do movie reviews and trailer reactions and stuff like that, so if that interests you, I'd encourage you to subscribe to the channel. And if you end up liking this review, I'd appreciate you if you hit that like button. To start off this review, I will say I have mixed feelings about this season. This season of the show has hit every emotional feeling for me. There are things I love about this season, there are things I like, things I thought were just okay, things I disliked, and things I hated. So strap yourselves in, and it'll also be full spoilers from this point onwards. So if you haven't caught up with all of season 11, plus the New Year's special resolution, it'll be full spoilers for all of that. So you have been warned. Now, I've been watching Doctor Who since the reboot in 2005. I was 5 years old when I started watching this show, and I've been watching it ever since. So it's safe to say I love this show, and I had high hopes for this new chapter of the show. Now, I was skeptical about having a female Doctor to begin with, but nevertheless, I was extremely excited when the show came back onto the air. So let's just get straight into the things I loved. The first thing that I really want to talk about is that I love the opening title sequence. It somehow feels classic yet contemporary at the same time, and I love the music and the visual design of it. It's very trippy, but I absolutely love the opening title sequence for season 11. The next thing is the TARDIS exterior. I love the visual redesign, the new shade of blue, but I also like how the pull to open sign is now black. I think that complements that shade of blue quite well. Also the blue lantern on the top, that looks really cool. And I love how the orange of the interior kind of, peeks through the windows and all that. And I just love the exterior design of this TARDIS. Now, across this season, we also had a few references to the Tennant and Matt Smith era. And I really appreciated those Easter eggs that were sprinkled across the season. There was one time where we mentioned, obviously, Agatha Christie and all that. And then we had another reference to the Fez and all that type of stuff. So there were a few references that I really appreciated because I always love when we have little callbacks to previous seasons of Doctor Who. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about, and this was a huge thing for me in this season, is the music. Segun Akinola took over from Murray Gold as the composer for Doctor Who. Obviously, Murray Gold's been serving us since the reboot way back in 2005, and he's composed some fantastic music for Doctor Who. But Segun Akinola came in, brought his own fresh take to it, and did a brilliant job. Some of his themes that he created for this season were fantastic. The 13th theme, obviously Jodie Whittaker's theme, was fantastic. I listen to this all the time. It's a brilliant piece of music. But across this whole season, he just crafted such interesting and rhythmic music. And it really weaved itself in to the scenes very well. And that was a huge standout for me, was the music in this season. Now, after every regeneration, from David Tennant to Matt Smith, from Matt Smith to Capaldi, and obviously now Capaldi to Jodie Whittaker, the show gets a massive budget increase. And obviously with that, we have a much more cinematic look to Doctor Who. The overall visual aesthetic is far more cinematic. I know the creators got access to new camera lenses, and we also changed the aspect ratio. And for that, I felt like it provided a very new feel to the show, a very different feel to what we're used to. But I like this improvement. I thought the show looked beautiful from a technical perspective. The set designs were always fantastic, I thought. There was a few episodes that gave me vibes of Blade Runner and all that type of stuff. It was really beautiful. But of course, all the camera movements and all that type of stuff was just beautiful. Now, the next thing that I really loved about this season was the first episode with Jodie Whittaker. I really appreciated all the character setup and the way they established these characters. I thought was really interesting. It was a great premiere episode. I thought Jodie Whittaker had some really great moments in that first episode. When she first falls into the train, she has like kind of little hints and little inflections of Peter Capaldi's Doctor, which I thought was great. There's obviously other moments where she just really takes charge of a scene. She walks out in front of everyone where they're confronting the Stenza for the first time, really takes over the scene and controls the scenario. And I thought all that was great. And again, music and the way it was shot all looked beautiful. But the biggest thing about this episode that I loved was all the different character setups. But one of the disappointments that I have with it is that not a lot of those character setups went through the whole season. We'll talk about that later. The Woman Who Fell to Earth was a great first episode for Jodie Whittaker. I love her costume and everything they set up with that. But the episode that I loved even more than that was episode 3, Rosa. This episode is Doctor Who at its best. Obviously, it's dealing with that very serious political issue that was obviously segregation on buses and everything, with obviously black people and white people and all that type of stuff. And I thought the way the show handled this issue was really realistic, really grounded, really self-aware. And I'm so glad that Doctor Who is addressing these type of issues and doing it in such an entertaining and obviously historical way. Because there are certain things that obviously me as an Australian, I don't know a lot about American history, but obviously learning more about this aspect and all this different stuff I found really fascinating. But one of Doctor Who's best aspects is that obviously it's a sci-fi show that deals with time travel, and it uses these aspects not only to entertain but to educate. And I found this episode really great with regards to the way it treated its subject matter and the way it took itself seriously with the character of Rosa Parks and the way all the Team TARDIS interacted in that situation. I thought this was a fantastic episode, and again, Doctor Who at its best. And the last thing that I really loved about this season was Graham. I thought he was a fantastic companion, easily one of the best parts of the show. Bradley Walsh did a fantastic job with the performance, and I think he's arguably the best part of the show. I'd love to hear what you guys think of Graham down in the comments below. Now, let's move on to the things I liked about this season. And I like Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor. She has a very quirky charisma, and I really like that about her. I know some people aren't big fans of the way she pulls off those facial expressions, but for me personally, that's what makes this version of the Doctor so unique, because she is kind of weird and a bit out there. But I enjoy Jodie Whittaker's performance of the Doctor. There are a few things that I will criticize momentarily, but overall, I really enjoyed her charisma, the way she interacted with characters, and obviously, most importantly, the way she dealt with situations. Like I said, there is a few things I will critique in a minute, but again, I really appreciated the way Jodie Whittaker brought life into this character and brought something new to it that we've never seen before. Obviously, being a woman is obviously huge for Doctor Who. It's never been done before, but I really enjoyed obviously the way that everything kind of happened to this character. And I felt like she was the Doctor. But I know that can be a bit polarizing within the Whovian community. But for me personally, I really enjoyed her as the Doctor. Now, like I mentioned before, the show really went back to its origins. Obviously, when the show was created back in the 60s, it was originally created as like this science fiction education type show. Obviously, to go to different times in history and teach kids about various historical events and obviously have elements of sci-fi in them. And I liked how this season went back to those origins. That is something that I appreciated. Like I said, not only does the show entertain, but it also educates. And I really appreciated it this season, utilizing this aspect of classic Who. The other thing that I really liked about this season was Team TARDIS. I really liked the dynamic between all the companions. Like I said, I really enjoyed Jodie Whittaker's bouncing off all the different characters, but also Graham and Ryan and Yaz. I thought the way this group dynamic interacted between all the different scenarios, I found entertaining. I know some people may not like the group dynamic, but I thought it was a really good change of pace, because one thing that obviously the Doctor has always undergone throughout most of the seasons that we've had since the reboot is that we've always had either the Doctor with one or maybe two companions. Obviously, when it was either the Doctor and Rose or the Doctor and Donna, and then even the Doctor with Rory and Amy and all for that short period. So the Doctor's always had like a small group of people, and I thought this season going to the larger group of 4 people in Team TARDIS, I thought was a fresh change of pace. And I liked this aspect of the season. I also really enjoyed episode 6, Demons of Punjab. This episode dealt with, obviously, the character of Yaz and her family a bit more. Again, Doctor Who didn't pull its punches again in this episode. They took this issue really seriously and obviously taught you about the partition of India and all that type of stuff. And this was an episode that I thought was really good. I really enjoyed it. But another episode that I really enjoyed, and I would say probably felt maybe the most Doctor Who out of all the episodes this season, was Kablam. I really liked this episode. Obviously, the Kablam robots were really interesting. They did provide a bit of a suspenseful aspect to the episode. But I really enjoyed all the different male aspects, the mystery. I was caught up all in it. And I really enjoyed the Kablam episode. For me, it kind of fell apart towards the end. The villain reveal was kind of just a bit anticlimactic and, I don't know, a bit over the top. I wasn't a big fan of that villain reveal, but I really enjoyed the concept of, obviously, bubble wrap, blowing up and killing people. But I really enjoyed this episode. But the Demons in Punjab and Kablam were definitely 2 of my big favourites from this season. Now, those are all the things I liked about season 11. So let's move on to the things I thought were just okay about this season. Now, I don't know if this is going to be a controversial take or not, but I'm a bit wishy-washy on the sonic screwdriver. When the Doctor created it in the first episode, I was a bit unsure if that was, possible, being able to create it from all these, scraps and stuff. But I kind of let it go. But the overall look of it, I'm not fully sold on. Like, as you can see, I've collected some of the sonic screwdrivers, and I'm honestly not a big fan of the design. I like the orange and the way how like the top kind of spins and stuff, but I'm not the biggest fan of the way the sonic screwdriver looked. It's not bad, but again, I just thought it was an okay design, and the way it came into the story, I thought was just okay as well. Moving on, and I now want to talk about the villains of the week. Obviously, Doctor Who has a lot of standalone episodes in its season, but this season was pretty much all standalone episodes. And because of that, we had that very villain of the week feel. And for me, I felt like a lot of the antagonists across this season were very mediocre at best. There were a few interesting designs and interesting creatures, but overall, I didn't find myself very menaced, very scared by many of the villains of this season. And the sad reality is, like, besides the stanza, which showed up in the first and the last episode, I couldn't really tell you off the top of my head any of the villains in this season. Now, the next big thing that I want to talk about is the whole political correctness agenda. This was something that I picked up on maybe midway through the season. I did see somewhere online that one of the big themes about this season is how obviously humans are evil, and they are obviously have a lot of bad things going on, and humans are responsible for a lot of that. And I did find this theme very noticeable. There are lots of references, lots of moments of dialogue that are very relevant to today's societies. And for me, it didn't bother me as much as some people, I feel. For me personally, I felt like it's important to like bring up certain issues. Like I said, I really enjoyed the way they handled the Rosa Parks episode. But there were just certain things across the season I was like, why are we referencing this? Why is this relevant? And the last thing that I want to talk about in the OK section is the season finale. I thought the season finale was very underwhelming. It just didn't build to anything. Across all the previous seasons of Doctor Who, we've either had a 2-parter to finish the season, sometimes a 3-parter, but it's always built to something. We've had a really big climax to the season that's had either some huge ramifications or a really emotional moment. And for this season, I was watching it with my family, and by the time we got to the finale, we were like, oh yeah, it's the finale this week. and it just didn't feel like it built to anything, and the episode itself was just fine. Like, again, the Stencer coming back was very telegraphed, and there was no sort of urgency or really threat in the episode. It just felt cliche, and the finale overall was very disappointing. Now, let's talk about the things I disliked about this season, and that being the storytelling and the episode writing week to week. One of the biggest problems about this season was that there was no overarching narrative. I thought it was very different going standalone episode after standalone episode, and it just didn't really have a sense of momentum across the season. One of the big staples about Doctor Who since the reboot is these overarching narratives. Obviously, when we had Rose Tyler, it was the whole Bad Wolf situation. When we had Clara, it was, the impossible girl. Around the time with Amy and Rory, it was obviously the whole incorporation of River Song and that story arc. Every season of Doctor Who has had some sort of overarching narrative, and for this season to divert away from that was very, very different, and I didn't like that. Like I said, there was no momentum across the season, and like I said just before, we built to a finale that had no stakes established, and it just kind of came and went. The season was just kind of, it just came and went. It was just nothing really happened on a groundbreaking level, which made me just like go, oh, like just, really kick me in the gut or anything. The standalone episodes were fine, but again, the week to week, the villain of the week, all that type of stuff, it just wasn't great, unfortunately. Now, I've already briefly mentioned it, but the character setups in the first episode were not continued throughout this season. Obviously, Ryan's whole coordination issue, it's like mentioned a few times, but I felt like that was going to play a bigger role in this season. And the fact that Yaz is a policewoman, I thought that was going to play a major factor in this season. Her really standing up and taking control of certain situations and being a powerful protagonist. But I felt like she just kind of didn't really do a whole lot. She just kind of sat off in the background a lot of times. And there was that one moment in the Kablam episode that I do enjoy. But where she gets the bad guy, whatever that kid's name was, where he kind of gets him in a hold, but then he just breaks free so easily and then, runs away. And I kind of just looked at Yaz as a character. I'm like, you're a policewoman, you're trained in this. And there was just small aspects like those across the season that kind of just made me a bit, disappointed for these characters because they just weren't living up to their potential that was set up in the first episode. We're getting close to the hate section, but before we get to there, I want to talk about two episodes in particular. Episode 4 and Episode 9. The Arachnids in the UK episode and the Takes You Away episode. These two episodes I did not like. The Arachnids in the UK episode just felt so meh. It just was not an interesting episode for me. It was just kind of just came and went. I thought that whole Donald Trump stereotypical American character was so over the top. He was really cartoony, and I did not like his performance. And I just felt the way that episode concluded was so abrupt. The way they dealt with the spiders and stuff. I can understand if you are afraid of spiders, this being a scary episode for you. But for me personally, they don't really scare me that much. So this episode didn't do anything for me at all on an emotional level. And Episode 9, It Takes You Away. This episode, again, was just so disappointing. The whole concepts that were introduced, I felt were really overwhelming. It just didn't give me a lot of opportunities to really sink in on the information. It just felt like a lot of stuff being thrown at the screen. And for that reason, I just didn't enjoy watching this episode. And then the way it wrapped up at the end with that whole frog, it was just so weird. Don't get me wrong, Doctor Who is a weird show, but it's whimsical, and that's what makes the show so entertaining. Back with David Tennant, where we have cat people, in hospitals, and all that type of stuff. Doctor Who is a weird show. Let's be frank here. But the way the show, that episode ended was just so out of left field. It just was very, very strange, not in a good way. And for that reason, I did not like that episode. Now, I've talked about the things I loved, liked, I thought were okay, and the things I disliked. So let's now move into the things I hated about this season. And a small disclaimer, I did not hate this season overall, but there were certain moments that I just hated about this season. So let's get into them right now. The first thing that I want to talk about is that I hated the fact that the TARDIS, specifically the interior of the TARDIS, didn't play a role in the story. When we got that reveal in the second episode, the Ghost Monument, I really enjoyed the reveal of the exterior and then the way we moved through the interior of the TARDIS. I really enjoyed the reveal, but we just didn't really get a good look of the interior of the TARDIS. We didn't really get a good enough time to really sit in that environment and really get a good grasp of everything going on with the console and everything like that. And I just did not like that the TARDIS did not play a major role in this story across season 11. This was one of the biggest things that pissed me off each episode, is that the episode would just start and would be in some sort of location. And I understand that there's a story that we want to get to and we want to kind of just get to the point, but the TARDIS just felt like such an afterthought. And this really annoyed me, because the TARDIS is one of the best elements of the show. It's so recognizable, it's so iconic. But for me personally, I was just so disappointed when we got to episodes and the TARDIS would just not be there. And I know in the past we've had episodes where the TARDIS hasn't played a role, but the TARDIS was pretty much non-existent in this season, specifically the interior. And if you're wondering what my thoughts are on the interior design, when we got that first reveal, I was pretty skeptical. I was like, yeah, I'm not sure about this. But I was like, okay, I'm willing to see where we go and what we see more of the TARDIS. But we just didn't. We didn't see enough of it for me. So honestly, my personal opinion is I'm not a fan of the interior of the TARDIS. Again, I need to spend more time inside the TARDIS. And I enjoyed all the time that we did in the New Year special. But across the season itself, we did not spend enough time with the TARDIS. It's just that simple. Now, the next thing that I hated about this season was that Jodie didn't get a speech moment. Across the seasons of Doctor Who, the Doctor normally has that one standout moment where he just delivers this monologue and it really hits you. Peter Capaldi did that fantastic across his seasons. David Tennant obviously had some really amazing moments, and then Matt Smith just delivered some great stuff as well. And in this first season, she didn't really get that moment to shine. And this comes down to the writing, like I was mentioning before. But this was one of the biggest moments that I was like, what's going on here? Because I think Jodie Whittaker is a great actress. I've seen her in a few things and I've liked her in the things I've seen. But for me, they just didn't really give Jodie enough material to work with and let her shine as the Doctor. So that was one of my biggest disappointments, that she didn't get that speech. And for some of you, you may be thinking, oh, it's just her first season. And for that, I have to push back against, because Christopher Eccleston, he only had one season, yet he had that amazing speech with the Are You My Mummy episode, where he's like, everybody lives. He had that one great speech, and obviously there was that part, in the finale for that season. Christopher Eccleston had some great speeches. So don't give me this excuse that, oh, it's only her first season. It comes down to the writing, and the writers did not give Jodie Whittaker that moment to shine as the Doctor. And that I hated. I just was really disappointed that they didn't give Jodie Whittaker a moment to shine. Season 11 overall I thought was okay. There were some episodes I loved, some episodes I liked. A majority were just okay or good. But there was one episode that I hated, and that was episode 8, Witchfinders. I did not find this episode interesting at all. I didn't find the villains very compelling, the whole mud monsters type of thing. It didn't really hit me at all on an emotional level. The side characters that we were introduced to, I thought were very satire. It just didn't really feel like Doctor Who to me, that episode. Maybe if I rewatch it, but the thing is, I didn't enjoy that episode at all, so I don't really want to return to that episode. I already know that there are a few episodes in Season 11 that I will definitely revisit and rewatch, but there are a couple episodes that I think if I have to rewatch, it'll be a struggle to get through, which is disappointing, because Doctor Who is one of those shows that you can just put on any episode and have a fun time. But for me, there was a couple of, like the Witchfinders episode, I really struggled to get through, which was disappointing. But within that episode, there was one thing that pissed me off more than anything else. Within this episode, this was the first time that I did not like Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor. She has that moment in the episode where she mentions something along the lines like, you know, oh, if I was a man, I wouldn't have to be dealing with this, or I could have just dealt with this situation so much quicker. And this line delivery, but no, it wasn't Jodie Whittaker's fault, it was the writer's fault. The Doctor is an alien from outer space. She is a Time Lord. This alien creature that, you know, is so powerful and can do all these amazing things. The Doctor should not care about these, you know, social issues that humans have to deal with between males and females. Like, the Doctor is an alien from another world. She should not care about these issues. And the fact that they just had the Doctor complain about it, saying, if I was a man, I'd be able to deal with this so much quicker and all that type of stuff. This made me not like Jodie Whittaker in this episode, which was really disappointing because, you know, I understand, obviously, when they cast a female Doctor, I understand that there was going to be those type of moments where that she would have to deal with. Obviously, being a woman traveling throughout history, you're going to come across those sort of issues within societies. But I thought the way they had Jodie Whittaker just deliver these lines of dialogue, it just felt very complainy, very whiny, and I did not enjoy it. Enjoy this aspect. And that's all I really hated about this season. Don't get me wrong, I did not hate this season overall. I thought it was okay. Like I said, there were things I love about it, things I like about it, things I thought were just okay, things I disliked, and things I hated. But overall, I thought season 11 was okay. Regardless of whether you loved or hated this season, you cannot deny that this season of Doctor Who felt very different from the previous seasons of New Who. Unfortunately, I do feel like we lost a sense of whimsy and witty edge in this season, and the episodes week to week rarely enthralled me. This is objectively not a bad season of television, but I would argue that it might be the weakest of the New Who era. Moving on to a more positive note, one of the big changes of this season was that we moved away from a Christmas special to a New Year special. And I really enjoyed the New Year special. Obviously, we brought back the iconic Dalek, and we actually made the Dalek scary again. This was great. I thought the visual design of the Dalek was fine. I did watch in a behind the scenes extra that this is a one-off Dalek, so for those worried that this is now the new look of the Dalek, it's not. We will have those classic Dalek design, but this was a really cool design for this episode. The story they had with it, the fact that this Dalek has been, you know, buried in the earth for centuries, I thought was fascinating. A great revelation, and they did a great job of making the Daleks scary and intimidating in this episode, which the Daleks have been missing for quite a while, I would say, in the recent seasons of Doctor Who. My only issue with the New Year special is that I felt like the storyline involved with Ryan's dad really slowed the momentum of the episode. I liked the inclusion of that character, but I don't necessarily feel like it was handled the best way it could have been. I will say though that the New Year special has left a better taste in my mouth. I definitely had a sour taste in my mouth after the finale. I was very disappointed and underwhelmed by the season finale. Overall, this was an underwhelming season of Doctor Who, but I will say I am content. I enjoyed Jodie Whittaker's portrayal of the Doctor, but I couldn't help but feel like there was something missing from this season, which was disappointing. Now, I'm going to give Doctor Who Season 11 a 3.5 out of 5. I am aware that this is a very polarising season of Doctor Who. I am aware that some people hate this season, and I do know that there are a lot of people that still really enjoyed it as well. I kind of fall in the middle. So I wouldn't say I've loved it, and I wouldn't say I hated it, but I just thought it was an okay season of Doctor Who. But like I said before, this is objectively not a bad season of television. So the people that are saying it's just terrible and all this, you know, nasty stuff, it's just not true, guys. It didn't really live up to the expectations and the potential that Jodie Whittaker's version of the Doctor and Team TARDIS could have. But again, I'm excited to see where we go in season 12. And I'm really intrigued to see what we come up with next, because obviously we're taking another year off of Doctor Who, which again just confuses me. Obviously Doctor Who will be returning in 2020. So they've got the whole year off to shoot, write, do whatever. Let's hope they come back in 2020 and hit a home run. But otherwise, if you like this review, make sure you go down and hit that like button. Obviously, comment, share this video around. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, whether it's positive or negative about Season 11. I'd love to hear it. Again, just keep it respectful. If you're new to the channel, make sure you click subscribe. More content will be coming very shortly. More movie reviews and trailer reactions and all that type of stuff. There is heaps of movies that I'm really anticipating this year. I just want to say make sure to follow me on Twitter and also at Stardust. I did reactions on Stardust to every single episode of Season 11. So if you want to get my 30-second brief thoughts on each of the episodes when they went live, make sure to check me out on Stardust. And I'll be doing future stuff, reacting to trailers and just little things that I don't have time to review on Stardust. So make sure you check me out and all that type of stuff. It's all linked in the description below. I just want to say thank you guys for watching and supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. As always, I'll see you in another video.